we also stressed, even though it is not his area of responsibility, I made use of the opportunity and we stressed the situation at the Oyster Pond that is not, let's say, going away. On the part of the Dutch government, we are asked not to escalate the situation, but it is really, truthfully getting out of hands. Getting out of hands because the French are not stopping. They continue to harass the people there, even though we have an agreement of observing a status quo, but they continue to interfere. And the latest I was made to understand last night is that one of the businesses operating at the marina there was served documents to file a court case against them. There are also a court case, I think, against the Captain Oliver's restaurant or marina, and they have been seeking supporting documents from our government in order to support them in their court case. Recently, their lawyers wrote a letter to the Kingdom government asking them to intervene, because here you have a citizen of the Kingdom legally operating a business on what has always been Dutch territory and is being harassed by a foreign government. Yes, it is our neighbor, but it is a foreign government. You have to picture yourself if this was happening on, let's say, the border between Mexico and the United States, that the Mexicans would come over on territory belonging to the United States to arrest and harass citizens of the United States, or vice versa, or the Dominican Republic in Haiti. And so there are many countries in the world. We are a small island, yes, but at the end of the day, we share a territory together, and we need to find ways to live in peace. The people of St. Martin, French and Dutch have been living in peace with each other for years, hundreds of years, but here now you have an interference by Paris, not an interference, let's say, by the local people. There is no fight between the local people, but there is, you know, the proverbial saying, when the elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. So we hope that in this process, the grass, being the local people, is not trampled upon, because we have no beef with our brothers, sisters, our cousins, aunts, and uncles from the French side, but we are seriously having issues with the manner in which the French authorities in Paris have total disregard and are showing total and blatant disrespect for agreements that have been made. On Friday last, as part of the ruling by the Constitutional Court, as part of the ruling of the Constitutional Court, St. Martin top civil servants would have consultations with civil servants from The Hague as far as the Integrity Chamber was concerned. Based on the agreement that we had, St. Martin drafted the law for the St. Martin Integrity Chamber, and that was sent to their Dutch counterparts in The Hague on Friday. And last but not least, last week also I met with board and management of the Charlotte Brookson School for Performing for the Performance Arts. The Minister of Education was to be in that meeting as well, but was off island. The discussions centered, of course, on the way forward as far as finding a permanent location, as they are still using the old administration building for their school, and through our intervention, GEBE was to provide a parcel of land for the construction, even if that too would have been on a long-term temporary basis. When you say long-term, for at least 5 years, to give them an opportunity to find a final resting spot for their school. The minister has been in discussion with them as well before she left, and those discussions will continue, and we are hopeful that solutions would be found. Because of time constraint, I will not, go any deeper or react to, not react, but say anything more about the discussions the Minister of Romy and myself had in regards to housing. But there are some good plans. And as the Minister also indicated, we need to not just focus on, let's say, the young professionals in our society, because yes, they are important. We need our young professionals to continue building leadership in this country. But besides that, we also need to look out for the two groups that are being marginalized as far as housing is concerned. Seniors, people who have worked their entire life, were able to pay their rent, and those that do not own a home find themselves now falling on the roadside because you become a pensioner. Your income drastically drops sometimes from 4,000 or 5,000 guilders to a mere 1,000, 1,100 guilders, and for that they cannot pay rent and support themselves. So we need to, as government, look into providing for them as well. Then there is the group of the people who work, at hotels, restaurants, on Front Street, Back Street, in supermarkets, in the fast food restaurants, etc. Those people also find themselves not being able to own a home through a bank loan for whatever the reasons may be as far as the banking policies are concerned. And there too, government needs to assist in providing programs that can cater to these people, that some of them may be able to own their home, or at the least, we built Belvedere, many years ago. The housing stock there is limited. We need to expand to ensure that there are more homes available for those groups. So those are discussions that are ongoing, and soon, as I said the other day, I look forward to putting on that hard hat, and we go out and do groundbreaking so that these people can get what they deserve. I thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister William Marlin, for your opening remarks. At this time, we go over to the question and answer session. Members of the media, one round of questions. SMN News, Bibi Hadshaw, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marcia. Good morning, ministers. Minister Emmanuel, I'm going to ask you to touch on two topics, elaborate a little bit more on 2 points that you mentioned in your opening statements. One being the garbage. You call on garbage collectors to do their jobs. Haven't you not issued fine to garbage collectors, and where is that process? Why did it stop that today that garbage collectors or these haulers can go back to their bad habit? Can you expound on that a little bit more?
What I said earlier is that it didn't stop. And like I said, you got to give every individual the opportunity to do what they're supposed to do. And like I mentioned earlier, I would have to put pen to paper and say, look, listen, this is the consequence of you not living up to your contracts. However, the warning is, do what you have to do. You have a contract that was given to you by government to pick up garbage in a responsible manner, and I think they should be given that opportunity, and they know what they have to do. And if not, then I will do what I have to do. Yeah.
Thank you, Bibi. Lyndon Brown, BCN TV News.
Morning to all ministers. Minister Jacob, Kristen, for you. There's a concern. On Monday, I heard the sentiment of the different principals of schools in St. Martin. They're emphasizing that the children are not doing very much in Dutch. Is Dutch the first language or English? Because they're saying that the children are not doing very well, that the marks are very low where Dutch is concerned.
Thank you for that question. As far as the Constitution declares, both languages are official languages. The decision was taken many years ago for English to be the language of instruction based on the mother tongue policy. when we were still a part of the then Netherlands Antilles, and for St. Martin, Saba, and St. Eustatius, that meant English. Dutch continues to be taught in all these classes, supposedly at a high enough level that the student leaving from the elementary school should be able to go into whether it's a Dutch or a English secondary school. Having been in the system when that happened, I can say that I have had students who left from the mainly English speaking with the Dutch as a strong subject being taught in my class, going into the Havel VWO to take a L's, which are mainly Dutch, and succeeding. However, of course, we have been hearing, and the ministry has been responding to the cry that the Dutch level was dropping below. We've also seen it also at the elementary foundation-based exams. And they call, what is that? An improvement plan was put in place, including having Mrs. Van Gent bring forward or a curriculum where it is taught not as a second language so much, but as a foreign language for the students who have or don't have English as their or Dutch as their language, don't speak Dutch. So before it was being taught as if it's being taught to a Dutch-speaking person. So the approach now is to go that the Dutch is being taught to the students in the English-speaking schools as a foreign language. So it's just an approach, basically. But we are taking steps within the Department of Education to address our shortfalls in Dutch so that that is not the case when the students end their, whether it's elementary or secondary education. So there is a strong emphasis on it. And we've seen also more parents wanting Dutch as their elementary choice. And so the public education is starting a Dutch stream. The idea was to start with 2. However, at this point, we can only start with 1. As the need grows, of course, we have to adjust.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Bibi Hodge, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marsha. Minister Emmanuel, like I was about to ask you, GEBE, I've asked you this a number of times regarding the management and the operations at GEBE. Obviously, the power plant have some issues. There are issues whereby engines are not being serviced, they're on time, today causing a severe load shedding. Do you know at this point in time how long more does the people and business community of St. Martin has to endure this kind of problem without sufficient information?
Well, again, I thank you for the question, and I mentioned earlier that it is something that they are working on. I know for a fact that they are working on. And, I've been down to the power plant. I spoke to the individuals, and they themselves are hurting, knowing what is happening and what is going on, and they're trying their utmost best. To give a timeline, all I can say that soon it will be taken care of, and it will be a thing of the past in the coming future. However, and I apologize for the situation as it is, but they are working on it. And it's just a consequence of machinery, and when it breaks down and it goes down, this is what happens. But like I made mention earlier, soon these things will be looked into very seriously, and it'll be worked out. Thank you.
Thank you, Bibi. Lyndon, you have a question?
Minister Lee, congratulations again. As you are busy getting through with the project, the hospital. I want to ask, what are the relationship you have with the St. Martin home? Seeing that some person mentioned about the elderly is our priority.
In terms of the St. Martin home, we've always supported. We've supported SZV and their relationship with White and Yellow Cross and their development of additional space for elderly. As a policy, one of the things that we're working on as well is, together with NEPA, possibility for having more people trained for home care. So in other words, that people could stay for longer in their own homes, but get additional services so that they wouldn't have to go to elderly homes until really at a later stage where there was no other possibility.
Thank you, Lyndon, for that question. Bibi?
Sure. Minister Jacob, in your opening remarks, you made a swipe at the situation at the SBO school, the 4 classrooms. Can you tell us exactly how long that project has been delayed with the 4 classrooms, and why didn't you or other ministers prior to you make this a priority and get these classrooms going? Because at the moment we have our young people at home who can easily get in trouble, and while you're telling us, yes, it is delayed, but this is the procedures that has to be followed. Why weren't there some priority given to this particular project?
I lost the first part of your question. However, how long? The project, when I came in into December or November 2015, was slated to finalize in February 2016. Since then, I have been clearly expressing my dissatisfaction with the progress of that project, and it took more than a year or almost a year to actually get the project stopped, in the sense of to take it from the current contractor, whatever the case may be. Again, this is a case where I am the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, and not controlling the department that is controlling the construction. So there's a company that is assigned to do the controls, and there's a Department of New Works that has to oversee that. That process of giving the person a chance to fix their problem and get their work done, you don't want to take away jobs from quote-unquote locals, etc., created a time space that was unacceptable to me, and at a certain moment I said it has to stop, and it did. Hold on. And then it took that process to then put the project back on bid, etc., etc. There were certain provisions made, moving children to empty classrooms in other locations that proved to be difficult to manage. We moved them back. So yes, we know this has been an ongoing problem. We are also now looking at other ways to solve the space problem while these classrooms are finalized. And even the way the classrooms had been planned, I have questioned, but it's a plan that's already in place, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to look at the best case scenario on how to solve the problem. And this has always, I take offense at it seeming or it being said out there it's not a priority. It has always been a priority. And as a matter of fact, it's the only thing that remained on my budget for capital investments for 2017, to show you how much of a priority it is, despite everything else that has to happen in terms of capital investments for education, culture, youth, and sport. The Minister of Romy would like to add to that, if you don't mind.
I take serious with your tone in terms of letting the Minister of Education know that she's the one to be blamed, and that's not the case at all. You know, what the Minister is talking about is absolutely correct in terms of new works. And sometimes, and I always say it over and over, you have to give people a chance. You have to give people a chance. And why the contract wasn't taken away is because I believe that the individual should have been given a chance. And as much as the minister would say, I need to get this done, and I was, let us see where we are going with this. So it's absolutely not the fault of the minister that it took so long. So, the level of your tone a bit, I have a concern with it, because we can finger point easy. But things are not always as they seem, Bibi. As much as the minister is responsible for education, this is a responsibility of Bahia Deans, and not Bahia Deans, New Works. But to go and just jug the contract away from an individual because they fall short in one way, instead of saying, listen, come in, let's talk about it and see how we can fix this. It reached to a point where it can't be fixed, and now the decision is being tabled and followed up that, look, listen, now I'm going to move forward with your contract, and you can't have it no longer. So in no way should it be looked as if the minister didn't have it as a priority. It has always been a priority for the Minister of Education. But I felt also that I have a responsibility. And, and I have to chime in and say that, yes, it would have been done much sooner, but I felt that the individual should have been given a chance to pull up his socks. He didn't, and now the contract will be taken away from him.
Further to add to that, if I may, with the retendering of the project and the assessments coming in from the new contractors, it also ended up being much more than what is left on the contract. So therefore, the extra budget needed on capital investments. So it was projected to cost X. Only a part of it is finished, while a larger chunk of the funds were paid out. This is part of the problem. So we are looking into recouping certain costs that were already spent, as well as moving forward to get the construction finished, as the new tender is more than what the original or what's left from the original amount. So that also is causing a delay of some sort. But the advice is being processed, and we will figure out the financing of it moving forward and recouping our losses, etc. Thank you.
Lyndon, the floor is yours.
Minister Emmanuel, question is the government of St. Martin have a budget for agriculture? If so be the case, what can you tell us how agriculture is being developed in St. Martin?
Absolutely nothing.
Because it have been surfaced in newspaper that I believe the individual is pointing finger at your office, but I think agriculture is about the government of,
You know, Lyndon,
of St. Martin.
I know where you're going with this. And like last week when I told Baby, there are certain things that I'm not going to get into. Let me tell you something. You see, these personal sort of things, that's a personal issue with that individual that you're talking about. I am not going to discuss it at all, because I know where you're going with it. I saw you with a paper earlier, and if you read the whole article, it's personal attacks that the individual is making, and I'm not going to have that discussion with anyone. No, I'm sorry.
Minister Gibson, you explained about the budget, the semi-annual report and stuff like that. Based on the current budget and all that was done, how is government faring with paying its creditors based on the budget?
I need to elaborate on that when you speak of creditors. There are several categories of creditors. Suppliers, payments of loans long-term, and payment of deficits that were built up from 2010, 2015. Let me start with the last one first. The debts that are being paid off for the period between 2010 and 2015, for which we have an instruction, as you know. We have taken certain steps, and most of those debts are at a point where one more payment in 2018, and we have that also projected in our budget for 2018, is needed, and that's why we have a surplus projected for that budget also, the same way as we did for this year. Those deficits for that period that we built up those debts are going to be paid off 100%. We also have long-term debts that are in bonds, debts that we incurred as our share of debts of the Netherlands Antilles. Those debts, if you can recall very well, we recently this year had a 26 million debt that has been renewed in a bond, a sinking bond, to be paid off over 15 years. And so there are several others, but those are long-term debts that are in the form of bonds. The third category is, of course, suppliers of goods and services. The question is always asked, are we paying off our debts? We're in the process of cleaning up, determining what those kinds of debts are that government has. And I think we have succeeded in doing that up to and including 2014. We also, in terms of what the accounting offices have told us to improve the budget, there are certain financial management improvements we have to bring to it, and this is one of them, to determine what your debts for purchase of goods and services are. in that area, we're confronting a lot of problems because what we're finding on several occasions is people would show up today and say, "Oh, I have a debt you owe me from 2014." It's problematic because government has a system. Ministers has a limit that they can spend up to 50,000 guilders. Anything over 50,000 guilders, they need approval from the Council of Ministers. If not, they'll be acting illegally in paying it or incurring it. Some of the bills that showed up or popped up has an aura of suspicion to them, because when you ask, well, how come you didn't send invoices? And you would hear, well, no, we send them, but they end up in junk mail. That's the story sometimes you get. And verifying these items are very difficult. The first line of defense we have is, no, we're not paying, we don't owe it. You want us to determine whether or not we owe it? Take it to court. Because we have to live by the procedures and the regulations we have in terms of how money is spent. The system we have is one where whenever a purchase is made, even if it's under 50,000 guilders, it has to be verified whether or not the funds for that debt is budgeted. If it's not budgeted, it can't be spent. And that is where we're paying very close attention to since I'm here. And therefore you'd see in the budgets, in the annual accounts, you will see that, and even now in our semi-annual account, we're spending less than budgeted, because a lot of the money that we reserve for payment of debts are based on historic numbers, that we use those numbers to project in future what we have to pay. Up to the half year of this year, we have about approximately 12 million guilders projected for expenditures that have not been spent. Part of it has to do with certain positions that we have not been able to fill in government. Part of it is people who have retired, or people who have resigned. Those spaces have to be filled up. So that's part of the reason why you see such a large amount in, as far as personnel costs are concerned, is there.